Welcome everyone to CIS 101. This is still week 1. We're going to talk a little bit about Chapter 1. A little bit of review from the last lecture. Okay, just a quick and dirty reminder that in order to do well in the class, you need to show up for class, which you may or may not be able to attend the class at the scheduled time, but the material will be on Blackboard all week long, and I will be on Blackboard per the class syllabus. And of course you can email me at any time, and within generally 24 to 48 hours you can expect a response. Might be longer if you send an email to my Triton.edu address, because then you're competing with all the other emails that I get. You need to have your materials, and I'd like to re-emphasize that the lab book and the textbook and some place to store your information. I would suggest a flash drive, because computers break, people move around, things like that are required. The books you do not have to have this week. We're going to start working on Word Chapter 1 next week, which for that you're going to need the lab book. The flip side of it is you can turn in Word Chapter 1 late, and there's no harm, no foul, because I realize it can take, a couple of weeks or so to get the stuff in. Okay, there are going to be lab assignments due every week that will be graded and posted on Blackboard. If you find yourself running late on the lab assignments, it's really not a problem, generally speaking. However, I really like to stress to you that if you wait until the last few weeks of the semester, then suddenly decide, oh, I'll get everything in now, I've never seen that work out well. Just if you're busy through the semester, whatever keeps you from getting your lab assignments in during the semester is going to keep you from getting them in the last few weeks. It never seems to fail. And again, we have 2 exams. There's going to be a midterm exam, and there's going to be a final exam. And those exams are going to be online. And basically you have 2 hours for them more if you have special conditions that need it. Most people don't need the 2 hours. You're going to be required to have, for school policy, a Triton.edu email address that has already been reserved and assigned to you. All you need to do, if you don't have it already, is get a hold of the help desk or someone in the B building, and they can give it to you. And all the materials and all the activities are on the class website on Blackboard. And a big part of this week, we're not really doing a whole lot of stuff, we're doing a little bit, but the big focus this week is just getting used to Blackboard, getting used to how things work. There is a Blackboard tutorial. I strongly urge you to use it, because this class is CIS 101. This class is not an introduction to Blackboard. The expectation is that you are going to take a little bit of extra effort and learn a little bit about it, because it's a learning management system. It's software. It's got its own little glitches, and there's a little bit of a learning curve. And again, extra credit is available for those of you that need extra credit. And although my experience has been that the people that are all ready to go get extra credit are, generally speaking, people that are getting an A anyhow. However, the extra credit's there. We'll have extra credit just about every week. It's for that week. You can't take an extra credit assignment that was assigned in week 2 and then suddenly in week 16 decide you want to do it. If you don't do it in week 2, it just doesn't get done. But there'll basically be extra credit just about every week, and it can be helpful in bumping your grade. I'm not going to say that I see it all the time. In getting hold of me, again, per the syllabus, the email works best within the Triton Blackboard system. The second best way to get a hold of me is with the my Triton.edu email address. Again, it's in the class syllabus. Realistically, if you try to call me at my office, I'm not there. We're under the same quarantine restrictions that you are, so I'm not going to be around my office answering my phone. I hate to think what my voicemail looks like. There is a class website on Blackboard. You can't succeed in this class without going to it and basically doing the assignments and submitting the assignments there. You look at it as an additional learning activity that we are all, because of COVID, kind of required to use. course schedules posted in the syllabus. Basically, every week there's things that we're going to do, and they're guidelines. They're not etched in stone. Okay, we can, depending on the weather, depending on circumstances, we can vary them just a little bit. For example, last spring, spring break was bumped from 1 week to 2 weeks while we all sorted out the whole quarantine thing and what we were going to do. Okay, weekly lab assignments. Generally speaking, after the first few weeks, after you've had a chance to get your materials in, your books in, or borrow them from wherever you're borrowing them, you don't have to buy them. If you turn them in late, you can expect to have your grade dropped for it. Every now and then, somebody who has been attending class and doing all the attendance requirements, but just not getting the assignments in, will suddenly decide in the last 4 weeks of the class to do all the assignments, and then they're surprised to find that when their earlier assignments from the first part of the semester, even though they're well done, they're getting a lower grade for them because they are way, way, way late. Just going to happen. Basically, there is going to be attendance. You're going to be expected to post on Blackboard in discussion every week for attendance purposes. And if you miss 3 weeks, essentially you've missed nearly a month of class. After you miss 4 weeks, it's just like a job. If you can't show up for your work on a regular basis, and showing up during the scheduled class time is nice, but throughout the week is fine. As long as you get that discussion post in during the week by Friday, not Sunday night at 11:59. We're going to count it as attendance for the week, and you'll be fine. If you can't get that done for a month, then maybe this is just not, a good semester for you to be taking, this class. Although, honestly, one of the silver linings, if there is such a thing for this whole quarantine thing, is it is an excellent opportunity to take that opportunity to crank out, get the stuff done you can't get done, and this class is certainly one of them. If you find yourself with unusual circumstances, and I do not mean your dog ate your homework, I do not mean, my computer's broken, I can't get anything done, you should have a plan B and possibly a plan C. There ought to be another computer that you should be able to get access to somewhere. If necessary, the school has laptops that you can sign out, which gets us into why you want to save all your work on a flash drive, okay, which can be very inexpensive or even free depending on the Sunday paper and the Sunday advertisements for the enticements that the stores have to try to get you in. If you have some sort of situation that really prevents you from getting your work done, we will certainly adjust for that. And all your grades, I will try to get them done within 48 hours. Often it's usually faster than that, but my goal is every 48 hours will be posted on Blackboard so you can pretty much see how you're doing. It's very odd to me, at least, when I get a request from somebody about what their grade is, and I say, well, you can go on Blackboard, you're getting all A's and everything. I mean, why would you think you're not getting an A? Or somebody who has not turned in any of their assignments, and this happens every semester, and they say, what's my grade? And says, you're kidding. You haven't turned in any assignments, you've missed half the classes, you're being dropped from the class. Why would you think that anything has changed, that you'd be getting an A or B or a C? Okay, when we talk about what's going on in the class, it was reviewed from last lecture, we're talking about the objectives, recognizing how to become proficient with technology, describing how technology can affect social issues, and we'll talk about that throughout the semester. So we'll talk about describing how technology is changing our cognitive processes, how technology is expanding the ways we collaborate, and summarizing how technology is impacting the way we choose. Okay. I really want to stress to you that when we talk about technology, we're not just talking about a means for career advancement and a skill set that's needed to survive in today's society. We're talking about technology providing ways that you can make an impact. And that impact can be good, it can be neutral, or it can be bad. On the world stage, we are seeing an increasing acceleration of change around the world. I mean, we sometimes take for granted the world we live in, and we tend to forget that if we were born in 500 or 300 BC. Okay, we time travel to 700 AD. Say Rome, okay, or in anywhere in the Mediterranean world. We would find some changes, but we would not find a lot of changes. Within 1,000 years would have passed, but things would largely be the same. People would be doing things the same way, generally speaking. The religious structures would be, generally speaking, the same. There would be some slight changes, but not really a lot. A person, from 300 AD could, with, some linguistic adjustment, fit rather well into the world, temperamentally depending on the world of 700 AD. That is certainly not true today. The technological change or the societal change between just the 1950s or the 1980s and today, a period of 40 years, has just been phenomenal. In the 1980s, really the 1990s, we did not have the early 1990s, we did not have the internet, didn't have any of that stuff going on. Whereas today we kind of take it for granted. I still remember when it was a huge deal when I got my wife her very first cell phone. She was just couldn't get over the things she could do for it, and she would actually go out and go on walks and make trips and go to the store and stuff just so she could call her friends and stuff from their walk, from the store, just because it's new. Now and never mind text messages, never mind photography, just being able to make and receive phone calls. Now we pretty much take that for granted, and I'd like to stress to you that our cell phones are a luxury. Okay, don't have to have them, don't need to have them. You can live without them, but try getting people to give up their cell phone. It just doesn't happen. And of course, not only are we seeing what we consider to be accelerating change around the world, but is galvanizing people in new ways. The ability to do work and visit people remotely. When I was a kid, when I was a child, I think I saw my relatives in North Dakota one time in my life growing up, because it was, basically everybody had to be piled in the station wagon. We had to drive for 300 years across half the country to see them. Now, my children can Skype or teleconference, or we use Skype, with their grandparents at least once a month, just so they can see them and say hi. And of course, it doesn't hurt with the Christmas presents and things like that. Okay, we're also seeing technology impact us in terms of social issues, not just politically. Okay, so there are some new viral videos that are phenomenally impactful. There's a political advertisement for a person running for Congress in Baltimore actually received more attention and more retweets than Michelle Obama's address at the Democratic Convention. Crisis mapping tools. We're seeing the use of crisis mapping tools by various government and private organizations to track the progress of the COVID virus, as well as other diseases. And we're seeing major social media companies like Google interested in putting together and implementing contact management software so that you can determine anybody who may have been infected with COVID, who they've been in contact with, who they may have exposed it with, so you can more effectively address the possible, who may have been infected and who may or may not need assistance material, masks, whatever. Other global issues, and this is one it's a little bit like many of the things in life that are not necessarily fair, but it's the way it is. So there's what we call the digital divide, which is a great gap that exists between the levels of internet access and the availability of technical tools. And this is kind of a bad thing, because basically we find that the more people that can weigh in on a problem, some of the people that can weigh in on it are able to contribute to it in a meaningful way. And if they don't have access to technology, if they don't know that there is a problem that they can help solve, if the problem doesn't know that they're available to help solve it, everybody loses. We have several types of digital divide. We have a cultural divide between what we call the first world, the second world, and the third world, okay, and the access to digital technology. Okay, we have a digital divide between countries. Okay, and again, it's not fair, but it is there. A country like the U.S. and just the fact that it has much greater access to digital technology is much more able to implement things, get things up and running than a country that doesn't have that access to digital technology. And then we have and in fact, the United Nations, and we are a little spoiled in the U.S. and many first world countries. The United Nations considers a group of people, a village, with 100 people and access to 3 cell phones as the tipping point, the critical tipping point for access to digital technology. In other words, the United Nations in their studies has found that when any group of 100 people, or per each 100 people, 3 cell phones, when they hit that point, the people in that group are more able to figure out what's in demand, the best place to buy things, the best place to sell things, the best skills to study, the best items to produce, and their economy becomes much more efficient, and everybody, except possibly some of the middlemen, benefit from that. All the users and the producers benefit from this. Okay, when you have less than 3 cell phones per 100 people, you don't see that, and there's much more wastage and generally a poor quality of life for everybody involved. And that's at the cultural/state level. At the individual level, even within any country, there's a digital divide between those people that can use and are comfortable with technology and those people that are not. Okay, and it's not necessarily as obvious as you would think. You might remember Donald Trump before he was president. He used to have a show called The Apprentice, and you might remember Governor Rod Blagojevich was actually, for one season, was a contestant on that show. And he lasted all of 1 week because when his team, the very first week, his team lost their challenge to the other team, and every other member of the team complained to Trump about Rod Blagojevich's inability to do anything technically. Couldn't send a text message, couldn't send a fax, couldn't do anything. He was used to having people do that sort of thing for him. He was not able to contribute to the team's success in any way. And they all urged Trump to get rid of him, and he was fired within the first week because he simply, regardless of whatever skills he may have brought to the table, he could not participate with the other members of the group in getting anything done. When we talk about computers, okay, we talk about digital literacy, what I want you to leave this classroom with, not necessarily today, but certainly by the end of the semester, is understanding some basics about what computers are. Computer is any machine that performs the 4 basic operations of the information processing cycle. This is a computer. This is a laptop. This is your phone. This is a microwave. This is, more and more. This is any device at home or at work that has any sort of digital technology, a CPU, or microprocessor in it, is doing these things. And those 4 things are input, processing, output, and storage. Talk about a computer system, we're talking about a collection of related components that are designed to work together. And a system is going to include hardware, okay? And it's going to include software. Your phone is no good without the phone. You can't take a picture unless you have a camera on your phone. Your hardware on that phone is no good without the software, okay, which makes it work. And the interdependence of these 2 items and the constant race by companies to keep coming up with new and better ways to do things, part of the reason why there is such a huge demand for people that can work with hardware and can work with software, in information technology. I think if you remember, I mentioned last lecture that the unemployment rate for information technology is 1.9%, and in fact for security-related functions, it's like 0%. They just can't find the people to do the things they need to do. We talk about basic definitions of computing. We're talking about understanding what a program is, and a program is basically an instruction set, just like you and I have at work when we're either working with somebody or they're working with us, or when we were kids. Our parents would say, especially when we were growing up and learning how to do things, and they'd say, okay, here's how you tie your shoe. Here's how you get dressed. Here are the sort of clothes you want when you're going to church or to a formal function versus the sort of clothes you're just going to go hang out with your friends Is it hot outside? Is it cold outside? Basic instruction sets. And I'd really like to stress to you, don't let this intimidate you. This is not a lot of math involved, okay? There is a lot of specificity involved. And the salaries and the demand for people that find themselves able to work with instruction sets, basically software developers, very high, very healthy, and they're not going away anytime soon. When we talk about software, we're talking about all the programs that give the computer its instructions. And there are two basic categories of software. There's a system software that tells our hardware what to do, and it lets enables the hardware to do the things it's supposed to, like take a picture, make a phone call. And then there's the application software, which is the software that resides on top of the system software, allows us to make that phone call, to view that picture that we've taken, send that picture to somebody, prepare a document for review, whatever. An essential part of the system of the hardware that every device that's going to communicate has to have. If it's not going to communicate, it doesn't need these. Is going to be a modem or a network interface card of some type. Gotta have it. Can't live without it. While all of us, if we were in class and I asked everybody in the classroom who would like to win the lottery, just about everybody's hand would go up, okay? Now, I asked who's going to win the lottery. He was absolutely counting on that for their career plan. Hopefully a lot of your hands will not go up. And, this is, a little bit of trivia. Studies have been done that show you would think that if you won the lottery and you won millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, that you'd be set for life. You would think that. Okay. Studies have been done that show that half of all the people that declare, win the lottery, find themselves declaring bankruptcy within 5 years. Okay. That's phenomenal. And that's because having money is not nearly as simple as it seems. Having money simply means you're going to have everybody and your kid brother getting a hold of you and trying to get it. Very, very common for people that do win the lottery find themselves inundated with financial opportunities and financial challenges, and they just don't know what to do, and they get in over their head. It happens all the time. The reality of it is that most of us are going, unless we're planning to live in our parents' basements for as long as we can, okay, are going to have to go out and earn a living in some way, shape, or form. That's why you're here in college. This is a very, very important first step to going out and getting a good job, having a good career, being able to take care of your family or do whatever is important to you. Doesn't matter if the career is going to be in the business, in the arts, in the medical field, in law enforcement, in the legal field, in education, in the sciences, gaming, or home. And Chicago, we talk about gaming and but Chicago is actually a major gaming software and game development hub, and there's billions of dollars because people buy those games, in the software, in the gaming industry. And of course, homes have to have digital technology increasingly just to do the things they do. One of the more common advertisements you see on the internet and on TV are for intelligent doorbells with a camera, connected to the internet with a camera capability, so you can see who's at your house and you can control your house and turn on lights and lock doors or unlock doors or whatever is required. Which gets us back to understanding those four major functions that all computing devices use. When I say computing devices, we're not just talking about desktop computers or laptop computers. We're talking about all computing devices. Anything with a microprocessor, and your cell phones are right up there as a specialized type of computer. They all have to input data. They have to process data. They have to output the information, and then they have to store it. Okay, and then the cycle begins all over again. The information processing cycle in action, and we'll be jumping into this next week when we start working with Microsoft Word Chapter 1, includes you or I entering text into a word processing program. Okay? Then you run the program spell checker program. which you will learn next week, how to turn on automatically, and basically it's because sometimes your fingers go faster than your mind is really, going. You're not really paying attention to it. Mistakes happen. The computer then goes through the grammar checker, and it checks and compares all the words entered with correctly spelled words based on the dictionary you're using. For us, it's generally language. It could be French, it could be German, it could be any language. And then the computer will provide a list of apparent misspellings, and you correct the spelling in the document. And, just as I'm sure many of us have already found, sometimes the computer's suggestions are not good suggestions. Sometimes the word that we want, that we type, is actually the word that we want to use. It's just not a word that the computer's ever used before. Maybe it's in another language, maybe it's slang, whatever, or possibly the computer is just flat out wrong, because especially in English, there are many words that sound the same, but are spelled slightly different. And then again, when you're done, you're going to want to save the revised document to disk so that you can have access to it, in the future, either because you plan to or because it might become important in terms of someone having a question about it. I find, in addition to this, that my send folder, my email, is a very, very handy place. Someone says, hey, what about that document? I'll go back into the send folder and, oh yeah, there it is, and I can resend it to them, or I can access it. The email I sent and the file that I sent, and refresh my memory on exactly what I sent them and what it looked like. In addition to those 4 operations, increasingly, there is a 5th function that we are coming to depend on in a lot of our digital devices. Nobody has a cell phone, or very few people have a cell phone, just to hang off their belt or in their purse or hold down paper on their desk. We have it because we expect to be able to communicate, take pictures, send text messages. Same thing with computers. We increasingly expect them to be able to communicate. Same thing increasingly with a lot of our devices in the house. We expect them to be able to communicate or have the ability to communicate, which means they have to have that 5th thing. It's not absolute yet, but the trend is certainly in that direction. Along with that, we have what we call ethical debates. And those are the questions, just like a hammer is a tool that can be used to build a house. Hammer is a tool that can be used to hit somebody. Okay, one is good, one is not so good. We're going to talk a little bit about things like digital privacy. One of the things that digital technology lends itself to, and it's really kind of nice when you're archiving photographs. It used to be, if you want to make a copy of a film, non-digital film, or a photograph, every copy of the film would be worse than the one before. It would never be an exact copy. There would be a slight level of degradation. When I was young, I and my friends used to copy our videotapes back and forth. It was just one of our hobbies, one of the things we did. And basically the rule of thumb was that once you got to what we call the 3-off, a third copy of an original, it was barely usable, and by the time it was a 4-off, it really wasn't usable at all. And one-offs would be very, very good. 2-offs were okay. 3-offs were really pushing the envelope, and 4-offs, forget it. With digital technology, a 5-off, 6-off, 1,000-off, because it's all going to be zeros and ones, and it's going to be an exact copy. It's going to be identical, for all intents and purposes, to the original. And the entertainment industry is not real fond of that. Okay, people will put a lot of work into something and not real happy about it when somebody copies their work and uses it without properly compensating them for it. And it may not even be available for sale. It may be personal and private, and they don't want you using it. Understanding technology means also understanding that there are various types of specialty computers. There are computers for individuals, various types of PCs, and we'll talk about that. The PC and the iMac are 2 good examples of that. Various types of smartphones and phones and PDAs. Various types of workstations, which are, generally speaking, a more capable, more powerful type of a desktop PC. They cost more, they can do more. Laptops of various types. And there are some pluses and minuses of that. A lot of people tend to get wrapped up the portability and convenience of a laptop, and there is certainly a lot to be said for that. The flip side to it that we tend to ignore is that they are compromises. They, generally speaking, are not healthy compromises for the individual, and they are designed to be used in theory for not more than an hour at a time before you stop using them. And unfortunately, people tend to very often use them for far more than an hour at a time. We have our all-in-ones, which all the computer devices are basically either in the monitor or in the keyboard, a combination of the two. The idea is to conserve, footprint or storage space and have more room for other things. And we have dedicated internet appliances that are just for getting on the internet. They're for that, and they're not for anything else. And they do that very well, but don't lend themselves to doing anything else. One nice thing about a computer is that it can do a lot of different things. Also, the flip side of it is you may not need to do all those things. It's a little bit like Microsoft Word. Studies have shown that 90% of the people using Microsoft Word only use 10% of the functions of Microsoft Word. So why don't we get rid of the other 90% of the functions? Well, because not everybody's using the same 10%. Everybody has the things that are important to them, and therefore you have a tremendous wide range of capability within it. From the business standpoint, organizations have servers. They may have servers. They may have mini computers. They may have mainframes, and they may have supercomputers. And we'll talk about the differences and distinctions of those. And we will talk about the fact that of those, we have what we call digital creep. As hardware and software becomes more powerful and more capable every year, every 18 months, certainly. Okay, we're finding that tasks that used to be reserved strictly for supercomputers, and there are very, very few supercomputers out there, can, in some cases be handed down to mainframes or even mini computers, or even servers. Tasks that used to be, require at least a mainframe can, in many cases, be handed off to mini computers or even servers. Tasks that used to require mini computers can, in many cases, be handed off to servers. And this is not just a hardware function, it's a software function as well. Programs like the the SETI project, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is based on the premise that there are 100 million stars in this galaxy, and there are millions of galaxies, and we're learning more about the galaxies that are out there, as we learn more and more about the universe. Okay? The possibility of there being other intelligent life out there with those odds is pretty good. You can argue that it's really, really pretty good that we're not the only intelligent life out there, if in fact we are intelligent. If that's the case, and the SETI project, is basically trying to collect what we call the noise of interstellar space, and there's a lot of it, okay, and then analyze it to determine if in fact there is, anybody is signaling anybody else out there saying, hey, are we alone out here? Is there anybody else? Can you connect with us? That requires a lot of processing power. The SETI Home project doesn't have a supercomputer, but what they do, and you may or may not choose to participate in, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything, is they have a little application that you can download onto a computer, and basically all it does is when your computer is on and not doing anything, and for a lot of people that happens a lot of the time, they have, what we call spare cycles. They're just not using, like spare change in your pocket, got a couple pennies, you're just not using at the moment. And they use those spare cycles to help them process data. And when you have thousands of individuals all contributing cycles, you get the power of a mainframe, the power of a supercomputer over time to basically help you process that information, the data of the interstellar noise out there, with the idea that maybe if we correct analysis reveal that somebody out there is trying to signal anybody else who's out there, and in which case we can determine that, we try to determine what they're saying, try to determine where it's coming from, and then possibly respond to it. Other things we're going to talk about are the concepts that computers can work with all types of data, with your computer, with your smartphone. You can purchase DVDs or CDs from an online store. You can organize music collections. You can research music reviews or whatever sort of reviews are important to you. I find myself just about any time I'm buying anything, the first thing I do is hop on the internet and type in the product type and then type in reviews of it to see what people who already have it say. And Amazon is really, really good about this. If a fair number of people have bought a product, something is advertised on Facebook, and Amazon reviews are just terrible. I'm not going near it anytime soon. But if the product looks pretty good, and the Amazon reviews are, really, this is pretty nice, and I'm kind of happy that I got it, I'm much more inclined to get it. Using the internet to send emails to friends and family. I find the internet and digital technology is a hugely cool tool to help me track down people who I used to know, used to be friends with, and then over the passage of time, I lost touch with, because this is before we had email, this is before we had the internet. And then I can use the email, I can use internet to, basically look them up, and, in many cases they're still around, still doing stuff, and then I can, we can reconnect, and that's really kind of a neat, kind of a cool thing, as well as, stay in touch with our friends and family. Computers can help us, computing technology can help us become more productive and creative. Using a word processor to create a term paper, using a template of a previous paper, okay, that for a similar purpose, and turning it around to get things we need to do. This is used in business and law all the time. In law and business, you need a contract. You don't have to reinvent the contract from scratch. You basically just take an existing contract of similar purpose, make any changes that need to be changed, and then print it out, and everybody reviews it, and if it's appropriate, they sign it. Facilitating learning with computer-based study guides, the ability to use the internet selectively to find out things and learn how to do things. I know that every time I have a problem with my car, I love going to YouTube. Rather than spend a couple $100 taking something to the dealer, I love going to YouTube and finding out, okay, how I can basically spend $10 and replace the light bulbs in my car, or the switches in my car, the fuses in my car, or whatever. It's extremely neat the way I can do that, or find out new things that I did not know about before. Internet research, the use of the internet to find out things, and not just find out things, but very often they'll have footnotes and citations that'll enable you to find further research in that particular field. Is a phenomenal advance over what we used to have to do, when the best you could do in the past was go to a library and see if they had it in their reference section, and if not possible, and if they did, you might possibly be able to get them to order it, and it may or may not come in weeks or months. As nice, generally speaking, as digital technology is, okay, it has advantages and it has disadvantages. Okay, some of the advantages, of course, are speed. It allows us, I can crank out a contract really, really quickly. I can travel. We tend to ignore the fact that cars are a type of digital technology, and they increasingly are. The ability to use digital technology to figure out the fastest way to get somewhere, the least troublesome way to get somewhere, is really kind of neat and kind of cool. Where to hook up with our friends and neighbors. My kids are planning on a sleepover soon with some friends, and using digital technology to figure out where we're going to meet up, what we're going to do. And if someone's running late, they can text us and say, I'm running late, or they can tell me that they're there already. Kind of neat, kind of cool. Memory. The ability to use digital technology to supplement our memory, help us remember things, make lists of things we can, quickly look up on our phone, person's name, their address, their phone number, their email. Really kind of neat, kind of cool. Storage. Storage is getting better and better. The amount of information we can store on our phones is phenomenal. And along with that, I find myself constantly surprised by my kids' ability to fill up their phone storage with just amazing amounts that I consider garbage. They don't even realize that they're doing it, and then they have to go through and start deleting stuff. And it's reliable and accurate. Digital technology will do the same things over and over and over again, and it doesn't get bored. Whereas people, after they do something a certain number of times, they will start getting bored and start making mistakes, often to a much greater extent than digital technology will. Although digital technology makes mistakes too. All those zeros and ones occasionally don't do what we expect them to do. And of course, some of the disadvantages include information overload. I don't know about you, but every morning one of the first things I do when I open up my email is I go through and I start deleting and labeling as spam email that I don't want and I never wanted. One of the downsides to order, when you order food online from any, restaurant, and sometimes it's a convenient thing to do, is you almost immediately, you start getting 80 million emails from the pizza place or the Jimmy John's or whatever about all the specials and things are going on. One a day is fine, but 5 or 6 a day, I really don't need that. And I'd rather not have one a day. One a week would be fine. Digital technology is slower than human memory. Having to look something up on your phone is not nearly as good as if you have it in your memory. Just the other day, when I was being advised that I needed to order a new cable for my CDI furler, and of course, the very first, one of the first things that any store is going to ask and say, okay, you need a new 4-stay cable. Goes, what kind of furler is it? And while I had in my notes that I had a CDI FF2, because I also happened to remember that I had CDI FF2, and I was able to say, I have CDI FF2. I didn't have to look it up. I knew it right then and there. I didn't have to say, I'll have to look it up. I'll call you back. Okay. And it only applies to the hardware, not the software. Okay. It's not perfect. It has limitations. And while it's getting better all the time, it has problems all the time. Another disadvantage of technology is there's a tendency, that you see this especially with baby boomers, okay, for people to feel intimidated, to feel threatened by computers. And it's not just older people; it's everybody. Every semester there are people that are going through, they're following the instructions in the lab book, and they're doing something. Learning how to do something for the very first time, which is fine, and they are determined to do exactly what the instructions say, and they're going through it. And I'll get an email saying, I can't, I'm doing this, and the instructions say to hit any key for the next step. And I'm looking, and my keyboard doesn't have an any key. What do I do? And it's like, okay, stop, and step back, and take a deep breath. Hit any key, hit the space bar, hit the enter key, hit the touchpad, whatever. Hit any key. There is no specific any key. Just hit any of the keys on the keyboard. It's like, oh yeah, and it's very common. It's just they're so focused on getting it right that they're like, sometimes you just take a deep breath and relax a little bit. Computers, okay. One of the nice things about this class for many of us is that by the end of it, we will have calmed down and we will able to appropriately troubleshoot. Certainly there are times, I went through this just last week, where you want to throw something through the window, okay, but you can't, okay. It doesn't accomplish anything. It's satisfying for a second, but it really doesn't solve any problem, okay. And this includes using a little bit of common sense. Every holiday season, we see a surge in the number of fires because all this new neat digital technology and all these other things we do, like all the neat new lights, all the neat new decorations, all the neat new devices that we can plug into our house or our business, require electricity. And sometimes our electrical infrastructure was designed before all this stuff came along. And I think all of us have probably seen pictures like this, okay? Don't overdo it. Realize that when you plug in far more devices than the outlet was designed to provide, you're stressing it. You're asking to do more than it was expected to do, and this can in fact lead to a problem. Okay, it can lead to a fire. Very sad thing happened a few years ago. A family moved out of the Chicago area into Northwest Illinois, and a lot of this happens, and it was starting to get cool outside, and they moved into their house before the utilities are turned on. That's fine. And to warm up their house, the parents bought a kerosene heater, bought a couple of them just to keep the chill off, cut the chill out of the house until the electricity and everything could get turned on. Okay. Turned them on, tucked the kids in, everybody went to bed. Nobody woke up the next morning because kerosene heaters in an enclosed environment, one of their byproducts is carbon monoxide. Well, high enough concentrations of carbon monoxide in a closed house, trying to keep out the cold winter, chill, okay, basically pushed out the oxygen, and all 4 family members died in their sleep. They never woke up the next morning, okay? Did they mean to do it? No, but they just weren't thinking through what they did. Ergonomics are another topic that we're going to talk about this semester. How to prevent injuries from computer use. There are keyboards like this one up here. I highly recommend you get one of these if you possibly can. These straight keyboards that most of us are familiar with are straight because they're cheap and inexpensive to produce. You are much better off if you can take the time and effort to use a split keyboard like this. It's much healthier for your hands. Something else you can do is understand that a good chair is really one of the best investments you can make in your posture. Human beings evolved over millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years, to either be walking or resting. That's what we do. When we are sitting, we are putting 400% more pressure, if you will, on your spine than if you're walking or if you're lying down. Okay? We're not designed to sit, yet a lot of us sit for hours and hours at a time in the sofa, in a chair, playing video games, watching TV, and it's not good for us. Something else we're going to talk about is the ability to recognize the risks of using flawed software. Sometimes you will do nothing wrong. You'll do everything correctly, you follow all the directions correctly, and something is still not going to work right. And it's not your fault, okay? It's just sometimes the software and hardware just has, an oops in it. All these software programs, this presentation you're watching, any movies you've seen, okay? The computing, the microprocessors in your car, at the microprocessor level, everything is a 0 or a 1. All it takes is a little bit of a bug in that 0 or that 1. Okay, and you see this every time you've had a cell phone conversation with somebody and some syllables are dropped out of it or something is dropped out of it and you have an oops. Okay, again, sometimes it's not you. Ethics. We're going to talk a fair amount about ethics, which deals with the computer-related moral dilemmas and principles for computer professionals. There are things you can do that maybe you shouldn't do. Computers do a lot of cool things for us. Okay, it's like a hammer. A hammer can be used to build a house. A hammer can be used to hit somebody. We don't really want to go around hitting people, but there are people that do that. Okay, not a cool thing. Ethics is, even when you can do something, should you do something? Okay, ethics is basically responsible computing and understanding both the benefits of computer use and the potential harm of computer use. Using the internet to track down people I knew in the past, friends of mine that I want to hook up with again and say, hi, how you doing? I'm fine. Like to stay in touch is one thing. Using it to track down somebody who flipped you off on the highway and you're mad at, not cool. Stalking is not cool. But there are people, but the technology will allow you to do that to a certain extent. There are societal impacts of computer use as well. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 requires schools and other organizations to provide computer access. And this is really a good thing because it allows people who in the past have been more sidelined by society to more fully participate in it. And that's a good thing for all of us because a lot of times, like Stephen Hawking, for example, paralyzed from the neck down, one of the smartest people you would have ever met before he passed away. Very, very smart. Right up there with Einstein. Understanding the effect of computers on employment. Okay, skilled workers can earn more wages, but this can have an impact on the people whose skill sets are being outmoded. When cars came along, and a lot of us have either been in a car, have a car, know somebody with a car, we kind of take it for granted. It's a nice thing to have. But if you were involved in the buggy industry in any way, shape, or form, as a horse, as a buggy manufacturer, as a buggy whip manufacturer, whatever, you might have a different opinion on it. 100 years ago, there were more horses in Chicago than there were people. Okay, now that is not the case. Computing devices like robots can take over many of the manufacturing repetitive jobs, and this is bad because they replace people, but it's good because the people who basically supervise them, program them, maintain them, tend to make more money than the people working on the line. And we have what we call structural employment, when advancing technology makes an entire job category obsolete, like buggies, okay? Like we're seeing that with printed textbooks to a certain extent. Used to be books were books, but now we are seeing that more and more electronic books, use of the internet, Kindles are more and more. They haven't replaced books, but it's in the process to a certain extent of heading that way. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. Other things to think about include being a responsible computer user, okay? Just like having a designated driver when you go out to a party or whatever. Be considerate of others that are sharing the same connection. I know that when my kids are, doing their stuff for school, I just get off the internet. Don't want to even go near it because I want to give them as much room on the bandwidth, the road, if you will, in front of my house. They can get their stuff done. Dispose of your old computing elements properly. You don't want to just put them in the garbage and go to the landfill. They need to be disposed of properly. And a good way to do it, if you're not sure how to do it, is just take them over to Best Buy or Staples or whatever, and they will dispose of them properly for you. And, sometimes the best friend is the friend. Doesn't say always just the most popular thing. Sometimes a friend is one who says, hey, you've had enough to drink, or hey, you've been in front of the TV all day, let's go out and get a walk, let's get away from the TV for a little bit. A good friend is somebody who, when you sat down for 5 minutes, has turned into 5 hours, comes to you and says, look, let's go do something differently. Let's get away from this. Too much of this is not healthy for us. Let's go to the gym. Let's just go for a walk. Okay, in review. A computer is a computer is any machine, any device that performs the operations of input, processing, output, and storage, and increasingly communication. A computer system is a collection of related components, and this includes the definition for a smartphone. The processing cycle consists of the input, the processing, the output, and the storage operations. Okay. Spell checking is a good example of this, and two types of computers include computers for individuals, computers for organizations. Responsible computing requires an understanding of the advantages and disadvantages of using the computer. Using hardware and software involves some risk, okay? It's not risk-free. Computers can be misused or used, just like a hammer, to benefit individuals in society. Computers and computing technology creates new job opportunities, but it also shifts the labor demand towards skilled workers with better pay. But you have to be willing to basically put in the mental sweat to learn those skills. And being a responsible computer user means knowing how your computer and internet usage affects you and others. Okay, for this week, and we'll do the same thing next week, talking about what's due. And I'll send out an email on Sunday about all this stuff. You want to read this week, you want to read through Chapter 1 when you get your book. Obviously, you can't until then. You want to post either something about Chapter 1 topic or simply introduce yourself for week 1. Shows us you know how to use discussion, and that's what I'm using to track your attendance. For the lab, and I've sent out an email with attachments, and those files are also in the course content section of Blackboard. There's an email and an etiquette instruction set. Very simple things to do. Do not require your textbook, but you need to know how to be able to do these things. Next week, we're going to talk about Chapter 2. We're going to jump into Word Chapter 1 very slowly, very easily. Okay, and I'd like to remind you we have plenty of time, but you do want to be planning on getting your textbook or getting access to it. Don't have to buy it, but you want access to it. because in 7 weeks we're going to have the midterm exam, and it's going to be based only on the textbook, not on the lab book. So you're going to want that textbook. You're going to want to read through it. Okay, subject to your questions, we're going to go ahead and use the second, take a little bit of a break, okay, because it's been 54 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into the labs. I will be here in Collaborate and on Blackboard email, Blackboard Mail, so that you can get hold of me with any questions about where the file's at or what we're looking for. And you have all week to get this done. I would like the Blackboard introductions or Blackboard posts done by Friday, because another part of the requirement is you got to respond to somebody, and you can't respond to somebody if they post at 11:59 on a Sunday. So you have them through Friday night to post something, okay? And then you have until Sunday night to post a response to somebody. Questions and comments, and I'll see you in the mail section.